The sound of her palm hitting my cheek echoed louder than any word we had ever exchanged. It wasn't just a physical blow, it was a detonation, a sudden jarring explosion that ripped through the carefully constructed peace of my home. My daughter-in-law, with eyes blazing like a wildfire, didn't just slap me. She delivered a message, stark and brutal. And then, as if the physical assault wasn't enough, came the demand that shattered what little was left of our family unit. Give me the keys to your house. I'm still shaking, friends. Hours later, the tremor deep in my bones. It's a shock that hasn't worn off, a cold dread that clings. Before I dive deeper into this bewildering, heartbreaking story, tell me, where are you watching from? What time is it for you right now? Just drop it in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone in this kitchen tonight, staring at the ghost of what used to be. It helps truly to feel a connection when your own world feels so utterly disconnected. We were standing right here, by the sink, the late morning sun streaming through the window, making dust motes dance in the air. The kitchen smelled like warmth and comfort, a sweet, inviting scent of cinnamon and ripe bananas. I had just pulled a fresh loaf of banana bread from the oven, its crust golden, a small, simple offering of peace and domesticity. I'd even thought, for a fleeting moment, that maybe, just maybe, today would be different. She walked in without knocking, of course. That was a new habit, one she'd picked up shortly after the baby came, as if the arrival of my grandson granted her universal access to my life, my space, my very breath. It felt less like a visit and more like an annexation. I was trying to be gentle, to navigate the new tricky terrain of our relationship. Sweetheart, I'd started, my voice soft. Could you please try to call before you come over? I was just in the middle of my physio exercises for my hip, and it throws me off. My hip has been acting up, you see, a constant reminder of time marching on, of my own body betraying me in small ways. These exercises are my lifeline, my way of clinging to independence. She laughed then, a sharp dismissive sound that cut through the warm air like a shard of ice. It wasn't the happy, bubbly laugh of a young woman enjoying life. No, this was a laugh laced with contempt, a sound designed to diminish. You're old, not busy, she'd sneered, her eyes raking over me, taking in my slightly disheveled state. My faded sweatpants. I have a baby, I have responsibilities, you have empty rooms. The words hit me like a physical blow, long before her hand ever did. My throat closed, a tight burning knot forming in my chest. Empty rooms. Yes, my house is big for one person now, a quiet echo of the bustling family it once held. But those rooms aren't empty. They're filled with memories, with the quiet dignity of a life lived, with the space I've earned. I felt a surge of something I rarely allow myself. Anger. This house, I managed, my voice a little hoarse, is in my name. Always has been. It wasn't a challenge, just a statement of fact, a quiet assertion of ownership and autonomy. That's when her hand moved, a blur of motion faster than my mind could process, faster than any thought of self-preservation. The sting was instant, a fiery brand on my cheek, but the physical pain was fleeting. What truly lingered, what haunts me every time I replay that wretched moment, is the humiliation. The raw, exposed shame of being struck in my own home, by a woman I had welcomed into my family. And then, the worst part, my own son, Ethan, stood behind her. He held the diaper bag, a silent, inert figure. His eyes were fixed on the floor, steadfastly avoiding mine. That silence, his silence, was louder than the slap. It was a deafening roar of complicity, of abandonment. I've spent 37 years of my life in front of a classroom, teaching high school English. 37 years instilling in young minds the power of language, the nuance of expression, the belief that words, carefully chosen and thoughtfully delivered, can solve more problems, build more bridges, and heal more wounds than fists ever could. I've always championed the pen over the sword, yet here I am, today, meticulously dabbing drugstore concealer over a bruised cheek, hoping to mask the physical evidence of a conflict that words failed to prevent, a conflict that has left me feeling small and exposed. I'm doing it so the neighbors won't gossip, so the cashier at the grocery store won't ask, so I can maintain some semblance of normalcy in a world that suddenly feels anything but normal. I'm telling you this, laying bare this raw, painful experience, because maybe, just maybe, you're sitting on a similar secret. Perhaps you're carrying a burden, a quiet ache, a story of betrayal by someone you love, someone who crossed an unforgivable line, and you don't know whether to forgive and try to mend, or to fold, to retreat. to protect yourself at all costs. I'm not a celebrity, not an expert therapist with all the answers, not some guru with a prepackaged solution. I'm just a widow, a woman who thought she'd already weathered the worst storms life could throw at her. I survived the sudden, gut-wrenching grief of losing my husband, the monumental task of raising a teenage boy on my own, navigating the turbulent waters of adolescence and young adulthood. I thought I was strong, resilient, battle-hardened. Turns out, the absolute worst can wear your grandbaby's drool on its shoulder. It can come wrapped in the guise of family, of love, of obligation, and it can hit you when you least expect it, leaving you reeling, questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty and respect. It's a bitter irony, isn't it? The very thing that brings so much joy, that sweet, innocent baby, can also be the Trojan horse for profound pain. To truly understand the weight of that slap, we need to rewind, to trace the slow, insidious erosion of boundaries that led to such a catastrophic breach. Let's go back 5 years, to the first time Ethan brought her home for our traditional Sunday pot roast. I remember it so clearly. When she sat at my dining room table, a vision of youthful confidence, twirling spaghetti on her fork with an almost theatrical flourish. Then, with a casual shrug, she declared, "I don't do leftovers." I chuckled, a little surprised, but chalked it up to youthful eccentricity. Quirky, I thought. A little different. Later, she refused the apple crumble I'd baked from scratch, a recipe passed down from my grandmother, saying, "Sugar is poison." My heart sank a tiny bit, but I brushed it off. New moms are often anxious, I reasoned. I'd been one myself. I understood the fierce protectiveness, the desire to do everything right. I made allowances, extended grace, always assuming good intentions. Then came the wedding. She asked for my mother's veil. It was a delicate heirloom piece, hand-stitched lace, worn by 3 generations of women in our family. I was thrilled, genuinely touched to pass it down. It felt like a true welcoming, a blending of histories. 2 days after the ceremony, she returned it. It was crammed into a plastic dry cleaning bag, crumpled and smelling faintly of chemicals, like a forgotten receipt. "It smelled old," she said, her expression flat, devoid of apology or even acknowledgement of its significance. I swallowed that insult, that casual dismissal of my heritage, the way you swallow a fish bone, carefully, so it doesn't rip something vital on the way down. I felt it catch, a tiny sharp barb, but I pushed it down, deep inside, telling myself it wasn't worth a fight. After the baby arrived, she asked for the antique crib, the one my late husband and I had lovingly refinished by hand during my first pregnancy. We'd spent weeks sanding, staining, polishing, imagining our son sleeping there. It was a labor of love, a tangible piece of our shared history. "Of course," I said, my voice thick with sentimentality, picturing my grandson in it, a continuation of our family story. It came back a few months later, painted a stark, cold slate gray. Natural wood didn't fit her aesthetic. Ethan mumbled when I asked. My aesthetic, my history, my effort. Each small slice, each casual dismissal, each boundary crossed, added up. I felt like a sculpture, carefully crafted and deeply loved, slowly losing chips and chunks to a careless chisel, becoming less and less myself. It's funny, she never asked for a spare key at first. She simply expected one. It was an unspoken assumption, a quiet demand for access. When I finally handed over a shiny new set, carefully labeled, she took them with a look of annoyance. "Only one?" she'd scoffed, turning it over in her palm. "What if I lose it?" I bit my tongue hard. What if she lost it? What if I lost my sense of security? But I said nothing, choosing peace over confrontation, as I so often did. 6 months later, the request escalated. She wanted the master key, the one that opens the small, fireproof safe hidden behind a painting in my study. Inside that safe are my most important documents, the deed to this house, my will, my late husband's watch, a precious tangible link to him. "No," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. That word, a simple 2-letter syllable, became a wall she couldn't climb, couldn't breach. So she started pushing. She'd phone at dawn, her voice shrill, "I'm outside, let me in," as if my house were a public convenience. She'd jiggle the doorknob, insistent, rattling it like a prisoner demanding release. She'd ring the doorbell twice, a rapid, impatient staccato, then leave deep, muddy stroller tracks across my pristine welcome mat, a deliberate territorial mark. It was a relentless campaign of psychological warfare, chipping away at my sense of peace, my right to privacy. Yesterday, things escalated to a terrifying degree because I had finally, after months of quiet desperation, changed the locks. I didn't do it to punish her, not really. I did it because I woke up scared. A week earlier, I'd stepped out of the shower, hair dripping, wrapped in a towel, and found her scrolling through my mail on the kitchen counter. She'd let herself in, quiet as a ghost, while I was at my most vulnerable. That's when I felt something shift deep inside me. Safety, that fundamental human need, packed its bags and left without a trace. My home, my sanctuary, suddenly felt like a public thoroughfare, a place where I had no control, no privacy. I called a locksmith that very day. He was a kind, older gentleman with a gentle smile. As he worked, meticulously replacing the old mechanisms with new, stronger ones, he looked at me and said, "Lady, you pay the mortgage. You choose who enters." Simple, right? A fundamental truth. But not to her. Not to someone who believes that family, especially her family, grants her carte blanche. His words were a balm, a reminder of my rights, my ownership. But I knew, with a sinking feeling, that this simple truth would be anything but simple for her to accept. This was a boundary, clear and undeniable, and I had a gut feeling it was about to be tested. The very next morning, as if on cue, she barged in. The front door didn't just open, it was thrown inward with a force that rattled the very foundations of my quiet home. It was mid-morning, just as I was settling in with my second cup of tea, trying to regain some semblance of calm after a restless night. The baby was perched on her hip, a silent, wide-eyed witness to the unfolding drama. And the diaper bag, a bulky, brightly colored accessory, swung wildly, knocking over my antique umbrella stand with a resounding clatter. "Evelyn!" she shrieked, her voice echoing through the hallway, a sound that grated on my nerves. She called my name as if she owned the place, as if I were a servant summoned to her presence. The audacity of it, after I had just changed the locks. I met her in the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear and defiance. My hands were clenched, not just from nerves, but because I was holding the new set of house keys, the very symbols of my reclaimed autonomy, deep within the pocket of my robe. My knuckles were white. She stopped abruptly just a few feet from me, her eyes narrowed, her jaw set. She extended her free hand, palm up, a gesture both imperious and demanding. "Give them," she commanded, her voice low, dangerous, leaving no room for negotiation. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, to find the calm, measured voice of the English teacher I once was. "Please," I managed, a quiet plea, a desperate attempt to inject some civility, some basic respect, into the volatile situation. "Could you please ask?" She rolled her eyes, a theatrical, dismissive gesture that conveyed utter contempt. "Don't play games, Evelyn. I know you changed the locks." Her voice was laced with an accusation, as if my act of securing my own home was a personal affront, a malicious act against her. "These locks are new," I stated, trying to keep my voice even, though it trembled slightly. "I need boundaries." That word, boundaries. It hung in the air between us, a stark, unyielding declaration. It was the word that lit her fuse, the spark that ignited the explosion. She stepped closer, invading my personal space, her face contorted in a mask of fury. The baby, sensing the tension, whimpered softly, a small, innocent sound that only seemed to fuel her rage. "Boundaries?" she scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "You're selfish, Evelyn. Grandparents exist to serve, to help, to be there for their children and grandchildren, not to build walls." My pulse pounded in my ears, a frantic rhythm that drowned out everything else. My mind raced, trying to process the sheer audacity, the warped sense of entitlement. "My house," I said, my voice barely a whisper, but firm. "My rules." That's when it happened. The slap. It came swift and hard, a crack that seemed to reverberate off the polished oak cabinets, shaking the very foundations of the house. My cheek blazed, a searing pain, but the humiliation, the sheer indignity of it, was far worse. I stood there, a 68-year-old retired teacher, a woman who had faced down countless unruly teenagers and navigated decades of life's challenges, reduced to a naughty child, chastised and punished. I tasted iron. I'd bitten my tongue in the shock, the metallic tang a stark reminder of the violence. My eyes, wide with disbelief and pain, found my son, Ethan, standing frozen in the doorway. He was still holding the diaper bag, his gaze still fixed on the floor, but then, for a split second, his eyes flickered up to mine. He didn't speak, but his lips moved, forming a silent, desperate plea. Mom, just give them. In that single agonizing moment, something inside me broke. Something deep and fundamental, something I can't quite name. Perhaps it was the last fragile illusion that he would protect me, that he would choose his mother over this escalating madness. It wasn't just a slap. It was the shattering of a lifetime of trust, a mother's faith in her son. And then, the second demand, delivered with chilling certainty. Keys now. She left finally, the keys dangling from her fingers like a trophy, a symbol of her triumph. The sound of her heavy footsteps retreating, the door slamming shut, echoed through the suddenly silent house. I heard the baby's cry fade as they walked away. A part of me, a small defiant part, had anticipated this outcome. I had a spare, a secret weapon, hidden deep within the ceramic cookie jar on the counter. A tiny act of rebellion, a small insurance policy. I locked the door behind them with it, the click of the deadbolt a hollow, final sound. And then, I simply collapsed. I didn't make it to a chair or the sofa. I slid down the refrigerator, landing with a soft thud on the cool kitchen floor, my back against the humming appliance, my knees drawn up to my chest. I stayed there, in that fetal position, for what felt like an eternity. The minutes bled into hours, the morning sun giving way to the long shadows of afternoon, and then finally, the fiery hues of sunset. I didn't cry, not a single tear. Shock is a strange, insidious thing. It anesthetizes first, numbing the pain, creating a strange, detached calm. The stinging comes later, the tears, the raw, aching grief. My cheek began to throb, a dull, persistent ache that soon turned into a vibrant, angry purple. An ugly bruise bloomed beneath my eye, a testament to the violence. I took out my phone, the device feeling alien in my trembling hand, and snapped a photo. Evidence, I guess. A silent, damning record. But then, as quickly as I'd taken it, I deleted it. I couldn't bear to see the proof. Couldn't stand the stark visual confirmation that I had become a victim in my own home, in a place that was supposed to be my sanctuary. It felt too raw, too exposed. I texted Ethan, a simple, desperate plea. We need to talk. His reply came swiftly, coldly, like a splash of icy water. She's just tired, Mom. Don't make this bigger. Bigger? Bigger than a slap? Bigger than a violation of my home, my body, my trust? The dismissiveness, the gaslighting, the sheer lack of empathy in his response was another blow, perhaps even more painful than the first. It confirmed my deepest fear. He wasn't on my side. He was choosing her, choosing to minimize, to ignore. I turned off my phone, the small screen going dark, a reflection of my own spiraling despair. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea, the comforting ritual a mechanical act, but I didn't drink it. It grew cold, forgotten, on the counter. My mind kept replaying the scene, the words, the silence. I thought of my students, so many of them, who had navigated far worse circumstances, who had found their voices, their resilience, in the face of unimaginable adversity. And here I was, a teacher of words, mute, paralyzed by my own pain. That's when the decision solidified, a quiet resolve hardening in my core. I couldn't stay silent. I had to speak, here, to you, to anyone who would listen. Because silence, I realized, was another form of surrender. That night, sleep was a cruel stranger. Around 2 a.m., restless and tormented, I found myself staring at the glowing screen of my laptop, the blue light harsh in the darkness. My fingers, almost instinctively, typed the chilling query into the search bar. Slapped by family member, now what? The internet, a vast ocean of information and misinformation, responded with an overwhelming tide. Pages and pages of results scrolled past, a dizzying array of advice, some stark, some soft. Many of them screamed, safety first, urging me to consider immediate physical protection. They advised calling the police, filing a report, contacting an elder abuse hotline. The words felt heavy, official, frightening. Could I really do that? Could I unleash that kind of official intervention on my own family, on the mother of my grandson? But then, nestled among the more urgent warnings, I found softer advice, gentler paths, articles about family therapy, about the importance of active listening, about using I statements to express feelings without accusation. I felt hurt when, instead of you hurt me. It all sounded so rational, so calm, so utterly impossible in the face of such raw emotion. The truth, I realized, as I sat there in the quiet hum of my house, was that I wanted both. I wanted justice for the violation, for the disrespect, for the pain. But I also desperately wanted peace, a return to some semblance of normalcy, a way to mend the fractured pieces of my family. Those two desires, justice and peace, rarely share a bunk bed, do they? They often pull in opposite directions, forcing an impossible choice. So in a strange, almost ritualistic act, I printed out a worksheet I found online, a simple PDF titled Establishing Healthy Boundaries in Family Relationships. I sat there, filling it out like a diligent student completing homework, the pen scratching softly against the paper. Number 1, no physical violence tolerated. Simple, stark, non-negotiable. Number 2, knock before entering, always wait for an invitation. Reclaiming my space. Number 3, return keys, all of them. Reclaiming my sense of security. They were just simple lines on a piece of paper, but I saw them as more than that. They were fences carefully constructed. And fences, I thought, looking out into the pre-dawn darkness of my yard. Keep the coyotes from the chickens. They protect the vulnerable. They define where one person's territory ends and another's begins. It was a small act of empowerment, a first step towards reclaiming what had been so violently taken. Ethan, my son. He was my easy baby, always smiling, always laughing. He had a dimple that would appear when he was genuinely happy, a small indentation that melted my heart every single time. His father, my beloved husband, died of a stroke the year Ethan turned 14, leaving a gaping hole in our lives. It was just the two of us then, navigating the treacherous waters of grief and adolescence. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, waitressing evenings and tutoring on weekends, so he could continue with his saxophone lessons, so he could have a semblance of a normal childhood, so he wouldn't feel the weight of our loss too heavily. He was a talented musician, and I wanted to foster every bit of joy he found. He wrote me Mother's Day poems on ripped notebook paper. Childish scrawls filled with heartfelt sentiment, promises of eternal love and gratitude. I saved every single one, tucked away in a velvet box, treasures more valuable than any jewel. He was my world, my anchor, my reason for being. And then she came into his life. When he brought her home, I saw a subtle but profound shift in him. He began to morph, to reshape himself, almost imperceptibly at first, into whatever form she seemed to need. I get it. I truly do. Love can be a powerful, intoxicating force, a shapeshifter that makes you see the world through a new lens, makes you want to become a better, or at least a different, version of yourself for the person you adore. I understood the desire to please, to impress, to integrate. But I never, in my wildest nightmares, thought he would watch me get struck. I never imagined he would stand there, silent, inert, while his mother was assaulted in her own home. That betrayal, his silent complicity, feels heavier, far heavier, than the physical sting of the slap itself. It's a wound that goes bone deep, a searing pain that eclipses the bruise on my face. I keep wondering where I lost him. Was it a gradual drift, a slow pulling away? Or was there a specific moment, a crucial junction, where he chose a path that led him away from me? Perhaps it was in the aisle where he chose to be her husband more than my son. Perhaps it was in the quiet moments where her influence eclipsed mine. The boundaries aren't just for her now, I realize with a heavy heart. I need to draw a line with him too, a clear demarcation of what is acceptable and what is not in our relationship. Because a mother's love, no matter how vast and unconditional, should not be a shield for disrespect. As I wrestle with this agonizing situation, I see 2 distinct paths stretching before me, each fraught with its own set of fears and potential heartbreaks. It's like standing at a literal fork in the road, but instead of choosing left or right, I'm choosing between my very sense of self and the fragile remnants of my family. Path A, the path of forgiveness, of hope. This path involves inviting them to family therapy, attempting to bridge the chasm with professional guidance, hoping that understanding and empathy can somehow be resurrected. It's the path of trying, of extending an olive branch, of holding on to the belief that love, however bruised, can still heal. This path scares me, though. It leaves my flesh open, vulnerable to another strike, another betrayal. It asks me to trust again, to lower my guard, to risk more pain? What if it happens again? What if the therapy fails and I'm left even more broken, more exposed? Path B, the path of protection, of distance. This path involves changing the locks again, this time permanently and decisively. It means filing a report with the police, formalizing the incident, perhaps even pursuing legal avenues like a restraining order. It means enforcing a strict, unequivocal distance, severing ties, at least for a time, to safeguard my emotional and physical well-being. This path scares me too, profoundly. It might cost me the grandbaby, that sweet, innocent child who is the one pure joy left in this tangled mess. The thought of losing access to him, of being cut off from his laughter and his small, trusting hand, is a pain almost too great to bear. I asked my best friend, Linda, what she would do. Linda, a woman whose wisdom I trust implicitly, someone who has walked through fires I can only imagine. She's not just a friend, she's a survivor. Linda survived a decade of domestic abuse, emerging from it with the strength forged in unimaginable hardship. Now she teaches self-defense classes at the YMCA, empowering other women to protect themselves. Her eyes, deep and knowing, carry the quiet authority of scars, of lessons learned the hard way. "Honey," she said, her voice soft but firm, "if somebody hits you once and gets rewarded, they'll hit you twice." Her words, born of lived experience, resonated with a chilling clarity. Reward. Was my silence, my inaction, my desperate clinging to peace, a reward? Was I inadvertently teaching her that this behavior was acceptable? Still, I'm dangling here, suspended between mercy and armor. Mercy, because she is the mother of my grandson, because she is Ethan's wife, because I still, foolishly perhaps, want a family. And armor, because I have to protect myself, to reclaim my dignity, to ensure my home remains a sanctuary, not a battleground. It's a choice that feels impossible, a weight that presses down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. The morning after Linda's words, a new kind of resolve settled over me. It wasn't anger, not exactly, but a cold, clear determination. I drove to the precinct, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. Officer Patel, a kind-eyed man with a quiet demeanor, listened patiently as I recounted the humiliating story. He typed notes into a computer, his fingers moving methodically, transforming my raw emotional pain into cold, hard facts. He asked me questions, gentle but probing, and I answered them, my voice surprisingly steady. He told me I could press charges. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. He explained the process, the legal avenues, the potential outcomes. But then, his kind eyes softened further. He also said, very plainly, that family cases get messy. Lawyers, court costs, the emotional toll, the potential for retaliation. It was a daunting prospect. He handed me a pamphlet about restraining orders, a folded piece of paper that felt like a loaded envelope in my hand. A weapon, albeit a legal one, that I could choose to deploy. I folded it carefully, tucking it into my purse, a secret burden. I haven't filed yet. The thought of it, of taking that irreversible step, makes my heart ache. I keep thinking of Thanksgiving tables, of the clatter of silverware, the warmth of shared meals. I picture a small high chair pulled up to my table, the sweet gurgling sounds of my grandson. I see the innocent curve of his cheek, the small perfect dimple that reminds me so much of Ethan. The law, I know, can protect. It can erect walls, enforce distance, bring consequences, but it can also sever. It can cut away, cleanly and irrevocably, the very ties I desperately wish to preserve. I'm not ready to cut the limb. Not yet. I'm still checking, still hoping, still praying that somehow, against all odds, it can heal. That the wound can close, the fracture can mend, and the family tree, however scarred, can still stand. It's a dangerous hope, perhaps, but it's a hope I'm not yet ready to abandon. After the visit to the precinct, a new avenue opened up in my mind, one that felt less like a battleground and more like a path to understanding. I called a family counselor, a Dr. Morris, whose name I found through a friend's recommendation. Her voice on the phone was calm, reassuring, a balm to my frayed nerves. I explained everything, the slap, the keys, Ethan's chilling silence, the pervasive feeling of betrayal. I laid it all out, raw and exposed. She listened without interruption, her silence a comforting space. Then she asked me the most crucial question, one that cut through all the noise and fear. What do you want, Evelyn? I paused, thinking, searching for the deepest truth in my heart. Safety, I finally said, the word coming out as a soft exhale. Safety without losing my family. It was a tall order, I knew, a seemingly contradictory desire. How do you find safety when the threat comes from within your own kin? Dr. Morris didn't flinch. She simply said, with quiet authority, that such a thing requires willingness from both sides. Willingness to acknowledge, to communicate, to change. It was a sobering truth, a reminder that I couldn't fix this alone. But it also gave me a direction. I booked a solo session with her for tomorrow at 4. It felt like a monumental step, a commitment to myself. My first step, she explained, would be to decide my non-negotiables. What absolutely must change for me to feel safe and respected in my own home and my own life? What are the lines that, if crossed again, would necessitate a different, perhaps more drastic, course of action? The boundary worksheet I'd filled out at 2 a.m. suddenly felt less like frantic scribbling and more like a foundational document. Second, I would invite them, Ethan and my daughter-in-law. I would extend the invitation, clearly stating the purpose, to address the conflict, to seek understanding, to heal. Their participation, Dr. Morris stressed, would be optional, but their refusal, their unwillingness to even engage, that would be data, important data, a clear indicator of their readiness, or lack thereof, to address the profound damage that had been done. I paid the deposit for the session from the ceramic jar I usually keep for garden supplies. Petunias, I thought, can wait. Peace, it turns out, costs $40 an hour. A small price, perhaps, for the chance at reclaiming my life, for the possibility of finding a way forward, even if it's a difficult one. I need to ask you, because your voices in the comments last time, your stories, your shared experiences kept me sane. They were a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't an isolated anomaly, that others have navigated these treacherous, bewildering family waters. If your adult child's partner slapped you, if your home was invaded, if your boundaries were so brazenly disregarded, what would you do? Would you call the cops on the spot, unleashing the full force of the law on your own flesh and blood, on the mother of your grandchild? Would you swallow it, bearing the hurt deep down, just for the sake of maintaining access to your grandkids? For those precious, fleeting moments of connection that feel like the last vestiges of family? Would you demand therapy, hoping for a miracle of understanding and reconciliation? Or would you simply change your name, sell your house, and move to Oregon, seeking a fresh start, a clean break, a silent escape from the unbearable pain? Drop your thoughts below, please. I read every single one, every comment, every shared anecdote. Sometimes your stories hurt, because they echo my own pain, reminding me of the universality of human suffering. Sometimes they heal, offering perspectives, strategies, and the quiet comfort of knowing I'm not alone in this bewildering labyrinth. Always, they remind me that I'm not the only one choosing between the tender vulnerability of the heart and the hardened resilience of the backbone. Your wisdom, your experience, your empathy. It's invaluable to me right now. Yesterday, I went back to the locksmith, the kind gentleman with the gentle smile. He saw the faint yellowing of the bruise on my cheek, the lingering shadow of what had been, and his expression softened even further. He rekeyed my entire house again, free of charge this time. My grandma went through worse, he'd mumbled, his eyes holding a quiet understanding that transcended words. It was a small act of human kindness, a moment of connection with a stranger that meant more than he could ever know. But I didn't stop there. I bought a smart doorbell, one with a video camera and two-way audio. It's a small, unassuming device, but it feels like a sentinel, a silent guardian at my gate. Now, I'll know exactly who is at my door, who approaches my home, before I even consider opening it. I also had him install a heavy-duty deadbolt on the front door, one that only unlocks from the inside. No more jiggling knobs, no more unexpected entries. These measures, these careful fortifications, feel like both victories and defeats simultaneously. A victory for my safety, for my peace of mind. A defeat for the ideal of a home as an open, welcoming space. A place where loved ones are always greeted with open arms. A home, I've always believed, should be a sanctuary, a haven of comfort and love. Yet here I am, meticulously transforming my cozy bungalow into a fortress, brick by metaphorical brick, ensuring its walls are impenetrable. It's a stark, painful reality. I also wrote a letter to my son. Not an accusatory screed, not a venomous attack, but a carefully worded, heartfelt message. Just facts, laid out plainly, without emotional manipulation. I love you, Ethan, I began, the words aching in my heart. I was hit. I need a plan. I need you to understand that this cannot stand. I poured out my pain, my confusion, my desperate need for his understanding, his support, his presence. I mailed it, old school, with a physical stamp, because texts get deleted, emails get lost in the digital ether. But a letter, a physical piece of paper, can be held, reread, absorbed. It feels more permanent, more real, more difficult to dismiss. It's a tangible plea, a last-ditch effort to reach him, to remind him of the mother he once knew, the mother he once protected. The weight of grandma guilt is a heavy cloak, constantly threatening to smother me. People, society, the unspoken rules, all whisper that grandparents must help. They must be present, available, supportive, always, and I believe that, truly. I embraced that role with open arms, with a full heart. I rocked that infant every Tuesday while she napped, my arms aching, but my soul filled with a quiet joy. I pured carrots, painstakingly mashing them into smooth, palatable goodness. I sang lullabies, old familiar tunes that stretched back through generations, connecting my grandson to a lineage of love. But help, I've come to realize with a painful clarity, does not equal surrender. It does not mean sacrificing my dignity, my safety, my very sense of self. Guilt, that insidious trickster, whispers constantly in my ear. It tells me I'm selfish for wanting locks on my doors, for desiring boundaries. It says I should be grateful they even visit, that I should simply accept whatever crumbs of affection they deign to offer. Guilt is a master manipulator, selling bad deals in sweet, seductive voices, making you believe that your pain is your fault, that your needs are secondary. But I'm learning to answer back. I'm learning to talk back to that insidious voice. Gratitude, I tell myself, ends where safety ends. Love should never ever require bruises, either visible or invisible. I can love that baby, my precious grandson, from across town if needed. I can send cards, make phone calls, find ways to connect that don't put me in harm's way. It's a painful realization, a heartbreaking compromise, but it's a necessary one. My love for him is boundless, but my tolerance for disrespect and violence is not. A grandmother's love should be a source of comfort and joy, not a currency for emotional blackmail or physical abuse. This morning, before the world truly woke up, I sat on my porch, wrapped in a blanket, my coffee cooling beside me. I watched the sunrise paint the sky in hues of rose and gold, casting a gentle, ethereal light on the old wooden railing. In that quiet solitude, a profound clarity settled over me. I realized with a deep, liberating breath that I cannot choose for them. I can only choose for me. My power lies in my own decisions, my own actions, my own boundaries. And so, a plan began to crystallize, firm and unwavering. Here's my plan, meticulously laid out, a roadmap for the uncertain future. Keep the new locks. This is non-negotiable. My home is my sanctuary, and my safety is paramount. The smart doorbell will stay. The deadbolt will remain. This is not about punishment. It is about protection. Attend therapy solo if necessary. Dr. Morris is booked. I will go, regardless of whether they join me. This is for my healing, my understanding, my ability to navigate this trauma. It's an investment in myself. Invite Ethan and my daughter-in-law to one joint session. This is my olive branch, my final attempt at reconciliation within a structured, safe environment. Their participation is optional, as Dr. Morris said, but their decision will speak volumes. If they show accountability, slow re-entry will be supervised. If they genuinely acknowledge their actions, express remorse, and demonstrate a willingness to change, then, and only then, will I consider a gradual, carefully managed reestablishment of contact. This will involve clear rules, mutual respect, and a commitment to ongoing communication. If they deny wrongdoing, blame me, or refuse to engage, I file the report and enforce distance. This is the difficult, painful truth. If they cannot or will not take responsibility, then my safety, my peace, and my dignity must come first. The police report, the restraining order, the painful distance, These will be the necessary consequences. I wrote it all down on an index card, a small, tangible declaration of intent. I stuck it to my bathroom mirror, a daily reminder of my resolve. Plans on paper, I found, feel official. They give the chaotic, frightening uncertainty of the future a shape, a direction, a sense of control. It's not the future I envisioned, not the family dynamic I dreamed of, but it's a path forward, and right now, that's all I can hope for. If this story stings you, if it resonates deep in your soul, if it speaks to a hidden struggle or an unspoken pain in your own life, please hit that like button. It might seem like a small thing, a simple click, but it tells the algorithm that we're not whispering alone in the dark. It signals that these difficult conversations, these raw truths about family conflict, matter. Subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell, because next week I'll be back. I'll share what happens in that therapy room, whether they come, whether they listen, whether I walk out feeling lighter or heavier, burdened by an even deeper disappointment. I promise to be honest, to share the unvarnished truth of my journey. And please, share your wisdom below, your comments, your insights, your personal stories. They are a source of immense strength and comfort for me. I'm listening. I'm truly listening. If you know someone tangled in family fog, someone struggling with similar issues, someone who feels isolated and alone, send them this video. Sometimes a stranger's story, a voice echoing your own pain, can give you the words for your own war, the courage to take that first terrifying step towards healing or protection. I'm closing tonight with the new keys to my house tucked safely in my purse, not my robe pocket. It's a small detail, perhaps, but it's a conscious choice. I refuse to flinch every time fabric shifts near my hip, refuse to be constantly reminded of the threat, the fear, the violation. The bruise on my cheek is fading now, a mottled yellow-green, a testament to physical healing. But the one on my trust, the deep emotional wound that will take much, much longer to fade, if it ever does completely. Yet, despite the lingering pain, I feel something new rising within me, quietly, steadily, like the dawn I watched this morning. Maybe it's dignity. Maybe it's self-respect. Maybe it's simply the fierce, resilient spirit of a woman who has endured. I've raised a child from infancy to adulthood, buried a beloved husband, taught teenagers the intricacies of metaphor and the power of language. I've survived budget cuts, political upheavals, and the crushing weight of grief. If I can survive all of that, I can certainly survive drawing a line. Whether that line becomes a bridge for reconciliation, a path back to a healthier, more respectful family dynamic, or an unyielding wall of necessary separation, depends entirely on them, on their willingness to acknowledge, to apologize, to change. Either way, I still own this house. I still own this heart, bruised but beating strong, and I still own this story, which I am now bravely sharing. And I am not handing over the keys to my home or to my life, unless respect knocks first. Thanks for walking this road with me, for listening, for being here. I'll see you in the next video, stronger or wiser, or perhaps with a bit of luck, both. Until then, lock your doors, hug your people a little tighter, and always, always remember this one crucial truth. Love should never, ever hurt.